Captain John FX McIntyre? Wait, hold it, wait a minute. We didn't hear Frank's answer. We don't know if he's here. Of course I'm here. MASH was not just a television show, but a cultural phenomenon of 20th century America. For more than a decade on air, the series attracted hundreds of millions of viewers, becoming a true national staple and concluding with the single most watched episode in television history. It all sounds glorious, dazzling, almost too good to believe. But that was only the front of the medal. Behind the scenes, a very different story unfolded. Some stars unexpectedly decided they wanted to walk away from MASH, and backstage was filled with tension. Actors were sidelined, lines were cut, and contributions went unacknowledged. Some grew so exhausted they had to be hospitalized under pressure. Others fell into depression, and some even hinted they had endured harassment and humiliation right on set. So among this legendary cast who chose to turn their backs on MASH, and after leaving, how did they spend the rest of their lives? We're about to find out. If we talk about the monuments of American television in the 20th century, it would be a terrible omission to ignore MASH. Few people know that it all started from what seemed like an ordinary novel. MASH, a novel about 3 Army doctors, published in 1968 by Dr. Richard Hooker, the pen name of H. Richard Hornberger, a surgeon who had directly experienced the Korean War. He wrote pages that were at once bitter, tragic, and satirical about the madness of war. 2 years later, director Robert Altman happened to read that novel and immediately sensed a blockbuster smell. The result was the 1970 release of MASH, which shocked Hollywood. Dark, humorous, and brutally raw, it left audiences shaken. The film won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, the Academy Award for Best Screenplay, and became the subject of endless discussion among critics and the public alike. The New York Times ran the headline, "A Slap in the Face of America in the Midst of the Vietnam War." But everything truly exploded when CBS decided to adapt it into a television series in 1972. Few know that in its very first season, MASH was on the verge of cancellation. Ratings were so low that CBS executives had to call an emergency meeting in New York. One director even slammed the table and said bluntly, "Cancel it. This show is too heavy. The American audience won't swallow it." But then a single decision to change the broadcast time slot changed everything. From being ridiculed, MASH suddenly shot up into a national phenomenon. Emmys and Golden Globes were showered upon the show. American audiences treated MASH as weekly spiritual nourishment. At its peak, the show attracted up to 100 million viewers per episode. The pinnacle came with the 1983 finale, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, which drew 125 million viewers, making it the most watched television episode in U.S. history, surpassing even Super Bowl '70. NBC, its eternal rival, bitterly admitted, "On air, CBS has stolen the television crown from our hands." It all sounded so glorious and dazzling, it was almost unbelievable. But that was only the front of the medal. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was the complete opposite. Some actors felt oppressed, their lines cut, their efforts dismissed. Some were so exhausted they had to be hospitalized. Others fell into depression, and there were even hints of harassment and humiliation on set. Journalist Tom Shales of The Washington Post revealed in a 1981 interview what audiences saw was the laughter. But behind the camera, there were tears and even screams. And so the paradox erupted. A show hailed as the pride of America was actually driving its very stars to flee, even wanting to erase all traces of the roles that had made them famous. The first shock in MASH history was named McLean Stevenson, the man beloved across America as Colonel Henry Blake. On screen, he was the symbol of goofy kindness, the laughter that soothed the pain of war. But behind that glow were long nights of exhaustion, tears, and a deep sense of betrayal. According to many in the crew, Stevenson always felt that Alan Alda and the writers squeezed him out so that all the spotlight would shine on Hawkeye. Rumors swirled that some scripts were rewritten at the last minute, cutting nearly all of Henry Blake's best lines. An anonymous script editor once told the Los Angeles Times McLean often walked out of meetings pale-faced, crumpling his script in his hand after realizing his part had been reduced to near nothing. The breaking point came when Stevenson collapsed in the dressing room at the California set. A colleague recalled him sobbing uncontrollably, repeating, "I feel like just a leftover clown, used to fill the gaps and then tossed away. This isn't the dream I dreamed of." That line later became remembered by many fans as his career's farewell note. Leaving MASH after season 3 felt like liberation for Stevenson, a declaration of war. He believed that outside CBS Hollywood awaited with golden opportunities. But reality was far harsher. His own show, The McLean Stevenson Show, 1976, was abandoned by audiences after only a few months. NBC spent millions promoting it, even erecting a giant billboard in Times Square. But the result was so humiliating that Variety mocked from superstar to unemployed in just one season. His next show, Hello, Larry, also flopped, becoming a punchline in TV history. With his career in freefall, Stevenson sank into alcohol. Throughout the 80s, he was often spotted drunk in Los Angeles bars, disheveled and weary. A former friend told the Chicago Tribune once he drank until he collapsed on the table, still clutching a photo of the MASH cast, muttering, "If only I had stayed. If only I hadn't been so stupid." His health rapidly deteriorated. Alcohol and mental stress led to high blood pressure and a weak heart. He lived quietly, rarely socializing, and almost disappeared from television. Friends who visited said his apartment was stacked with old scripts, dusty awards, while he sat alone watching early MASH episodes, clinging to fragments of his golden past. In 1996, McLean Stevenson died suddenly of a heart attack at the age of 68. The news shocked Hollywood. The New York Times printed on its front page the haunting line, "He left paradise to search for another and never found it. His death left an unquenchable regret." Stevenson once had it all: career, fame, the love of the audience. But because of the feeling of being sidelined, because of the desire to stand alone in the spotlight, he gambled and lost everything. It became a bit